Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here. Monday now, the 19th day of February. That's hard to believe. February's almost done. We don't have too much longer, 10 days. Remember, we have an extra day this year. February 29th is the last day. We're not there yet, though. Happy Monday to you, though. We got a lot to talk about today. The main subject, La Nina is coming. It's almost certain as it can be when we're talking about weather and climate. What does that mean for hurricane season? I'll talk about that. But we're going to lead things off, though, with a little bit of other weather just to start. First of all, you saw this over the weekend, maybe? Yep, unusual tropical storm in the southern hemisphere off the coast of South America. Is that a Cara or a Cara, whatever the case may be? It has formed. This is kind of old news now because it's starting to dissipate already. But it did form in the South Atlantic Ocean off the coast of southeastern Brazil, and it did remain offshore, but that is unusual to see. Not unheard of, but unusual for sure. Water temperatures down this way, just warm enough for this to break away from a cold core system and become a fully tropical system. And lots of people were talking about this over the weekend. All right? Then, out west, a non-tropical system. This is a powerhouse atmospheric river, large storm system coming into California once again. I am telling you what, ladies and gentlemen, this part of the country is going to just get hammered with precip, low elevation rain, high elevation snow measured in feet. It is good for the long-term drought situation out there, but there are going to be problems. More landslides, mudslides, houses on the edges of cliffs. Maybe you shouldn't build there, but that's not my call. You do what you want with your money. But, yeah, a big-time system coming in once again. And the threat of tornadoes in parts of the Sacramento Valley. We'll look at that closer in just a moment. Here is the national weather map. Calm for the most part east of the Mississippi, really east of the Rockies. Most snow chances east of the Rockies over the coming days and probably into March are going to be limited, few, and far between. Much of the action is going to be out here in the west from the Rockies westward, especially the far west, I guess we could call it, the Intermountain West, all that area, the Cascades, all the way down through the Sierras, parts of the mountains in Arizona, Utah, Colorado, elsewhere, the Rockies, all of it. Pretty much west of the Mississippi, west of the Continental Divide, wet, snowy, colder than average, whereas the east over here, we're going to be very warm heading into March. But we're not there yet. It's only the 19th of February. We've got a ways to go. Again, are you serious? A lot of people talking about this. Slight risk today, way over here on the left side of my screen, a slight risk. It's like, what? Shouldn't that be like over here somewhere? Well, we'll get there. But today, it's in, I guess that's parts of the Sacramento Valley, just east of San Francisco Bay Area. The atmosphere is set up just so that we could have the possibility of tornadoes. The risk is 5%. Wind damage is possible in that area. Hail possible as well. Several storm chasers are heading out there. Much luck to you. Weird terrain. It would be interesting to see some tornadoes against the California backdrop, whatever, but hopefully everybody stays safe. And then just a general thunderstorm risk overall for much of California into northern Nevada, parts of southern Oregon, and even including the Salt Lake City area. Just cold air aloft. You got all that energy in the atmosphere, cold air, and the spinning of the atmosphere of that big storm coming in, that extratropical storm, and then the atmospheric river, again, that narrow plume of deep moisture streaming up out of the eastern Pacific, where we still do currently have an El Nino, but that's going to be transitioning pretty rapidly over the coming weeks and months. But for now, the El Nino is in place, the subtropical jet active, and we're having an active pattern in the west. But again, I want to emphasize weather can be a lot of negative stuff, doom and gloom kind of stuff. People say fear-mongering, whatever, right? I get it. I really do. We don't want to hear it all the time with everything else going on in the world. But there are times when even bad weather brings good results. The negative brings the positive. And we know we need the rainfall, the moisture, the groundwater, lakes and reservoirs getting refilled. And the more this can happen, especially over parts of the Rockies, the more it can positively impact the Colorado River Basin. You see, weather in my work and everything I do, especially as a geographer with a lot of meteorological training, putting all that together, it really helps to tell the story. There's a big picture here that weather is much more than just what you see with little 15-second videos, the viral videos of destruction and whatnot. There's a bigger story here. And in the long term, this kind of stuff is good for out west, and then good for the economy of the U.S. as a whole. Moving along, though, way along, all the way across the big pond, that's Europe. And this is Mike Adcock. Never met Mike in person. We've had interactions on Twitter for a long time. And he was tweeting about this. I think he is in Germany currently, working there. Well, let's just mouse over his name and see. With the Air Force, boy, you can't be. That's incredible. That'd be amazing. Maybe one day he can get on the Hurricane Hunters. Little small, tiny piece of trivia for you. 30 seconds if you'll bear with me. When I was in high school, I was in Vegas. I grew up my teenage years in Las Vegas, and Air Force recruiters did come talk to me, and I went out to their office near Nellis Air Force Base, and I was excited because I thought that's a good way to get into meteorology, but I was quickly shown the door because I don't have any hearing in this ear, and back then, I don't know if it's changed now, but there's really nothing they had for me. So there was my very short attempt to get into the U.S. military. I figured, God, that would be so cool to get into being a hurricane hunter and just other aerial recon. But that's what Mike Adcock has a passion for, and he is with the Air Force, and he tweeted about this. Now, I can't read German, but I can tell you that is an atmospheric river, and certainly Mike puts it together here for us. They are not just a California phenomenon. It's not a made-up term. It is a true meteorological phenomenon. And parts of Europe here are going to be impacted also by humid conditions, warm in that area with very heavy rain, to Western Europe by midweek. So you better make sure you get your quick dams. Yep, they are a partner of ours. I don't say sponsor, because sponsor to me is different. We are partnering to get the word out on how to battle floods and other mayhem, right, that some of these storms can cause. And as far as overseas, I know the UK, go to Toolstop, and you can get your quick dam products there. Seriously, I just want to mention this for you. Trying to help you with a really great company. I was actually right there near their headquarters and stood right out in front of it during the winter storm we just had. They're in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, and I did one of my Fox Weather hits right in front of their sign. It was on there for about 3 seconds. Just a little Easter egg that I hid in there when I was on one evening. I think it was with Steve Bender. Anyway, back to the subject at hand. If you're over in the European area and you can get your hands on some of these quick dam items, you might need them, all right? And that goes for you too in California. Okay, so that's enough for non-tropical related weather stuff. Although it is important, I do like to cover it. The main thrust here, the logo, HurricaneTrack, that's what we're all about. So let's get into this. Lots to unpack here. Lots of stuff's been happening over the last few weeks and months. I've been very busy, lots of travel, but I've been keeping an eye on things. Several people pinging me on Twitter, on our own Discord, etc. All right, what do we got? We still have the La Nina. So this is a nice tropics Mercator projection map, as we call it, centered on the tropics for the most part. There are our warm anomalies across the tropical Pacific, still in place. So we still have an El Nino, but it is starting to fade away. When I show you the subsurface animation in a minute, it's like mind-blowing. The Atlantic, well above normal, especially out in the tropical Atlantic. We typically call this part right through here the tropical Atlantic. And then up into the subtropics up here, the northeast Atlantic, also warmer than average to the tune of 2 to 3 degrees Celsius. A lot of science, of course, most of it is in the metric system. Celsius above average, the long-term mean. So that's what it looks like now. Now let's take a look real quick. This is going to be a slice, if you will, right through here in the vertical. And that is this. This is an animation going back to about a month ago. The subsurface. Look at what's happening. All that warm subsurface water being eroded away by a cold pool, as we call it, in the subsurface. And as such, the La Nina is on its way. El Nino on borrowed time. This will continue to progress. We're going to get more in the way of easterly wind blowing across the tropical Pacific here. It won't be too long, and that means wind coming from the east, and that'll help to upwell and bring up that colder water from below. We call these easterly wind bursts. That's all coming. And then this very cold water relative to average, and some of these anomalies down here, 3-4 degrees Celsius below average at depth. And so to get that to come to the surface, you got to get that conveyor belt to get going. So you get that easterly wind flow really strong coming this way, and then the belt cranks up, the conveyor belt. You upwell that water here, it spreads it out like butter on toast or whatever your metaphor of choice is, and voila, you've got La Nina, to the tune that most of the guidance is saying it's coming. With 80% confidence here, I guess that's one way you can look at it. Close to 80 anyway, I rounded it up. And I think the CPC, Climate Prediction Center, put us under a La Nina watch. Yes, that's also a thing. And we're going to leave El Nino. As you can see, that's where we are now. Quickly transition to neutral, and then quickly get into La Nina territory by the summer. This has huge implications for the Atlantic hurricane season. Why? Well, let me just show you. And I did this, I did it last year, I think. We have history, and we can go back and we can look and say to ourselves, what sea surface temperature configuration did we have during very active hurricane seasons? And one of the big hallmarks of a active season is no El Nino and a warm tropical Atlantic in sort of a horseshoe shape, where it generally looks like this. Your anomalies kind of look like a sideways horseshoe, right? And you can't have everything warm everywhere uniformly, or it distorts how the upward motion works, generally speaking. Sometimes you have these oddball seasons, but typically a very busy, hyperactive type season has a similar look year after year. You know what I mean? It's like a fingerprint or whatever, right? And we can identify that. So we all remember, those of us that are old enough, because we're talking 20 years ago now, wow, 2004, on this date, remember these maps are always a day behind, so February 18th, 2004, this is what the anomaly map looked like. Yeah, it's kind of mixed in the equatorial Pacific, no El Nino, and the Atlantic was already starting to catch people's attention. Colorado State, Dr. Bill Gray et al., right? And we all know what happened. We had a very active season for about 6 weeks, including 4 significant hurricane strikes on Florida, and you add a couple more in there that impacted outside of Florida, and it was a busy season, which included Hurricane Ivan, which I believe gave us a singular ACE score of around 70 points all by itself. That was 2004. What did 2005 look like around this time? A little bit more of a La Nina look overall. Pretty darn cold in the southwest Atlantic relative to average. Really cold relative to average off the Iberian Peninsula, etc. Pretty darn warm in the central tropical Atlantic, and even warmer than that in the subtropics. Way up in the North Atlantic, beyond the subtropics, right? Yet, 05 was one of the busiest seasons ever, and that certainly stands out in the history books and elsewhere. 28 named storms, which also gave us Katrina, Rita, Wilma, and others. Lots of destruction, lots of heartache, and whatever. That was 05. We remember that. So that's what it looked like in 05. All right? Moving on along, another big season, 2010. Now, we had a warmish-looking ENSO region, pretty cold Gulf and subtropical Atlantic. Remember, we had the BP disaster in the Gulf that year. Has nothing to do with the sea surface temperatures, but just saying. And then we had a very warm deep tropics, and we ended up with, I think, 19 named storms that year, something like that. And most everything turned well east of the United States. We had no hurricanes make landfall in the U.S. in 2010, but it was still a very busy season, getting started kind of late, and then it ran for a pretty long time. Then, 2017. Historic season that many of us remember, right? Hopefully. Because that wasn't that long ago. Come on. Warmish look in the East Pac especially, kind of just okay, we're just a little bit warmer than average in the rest of the tropics, kind of uniform there. And 2017, of course, a major impact year. Irma, Maria, Harvey, among others. Very big impact year. Then, just a mere 4 years ago, that hardly seems possible. Already 4 years? Yep. 2020. You would have been hard-pressed to convince a lot of people with that kind of look that 2020 would give us 30 named storms and Laura and, all sorts of them, Delta, Zeta, Eta, Caribbean impacts. Wow. And then just the backdrop of 2020, this was just adding to that. But again, not a very, you look at this, if this was 4 years ago, I have to dig up my videos from back then. It really wasn't until April that we started, okay, looks like the season's going to be big. But that doesn't look very menacing at all, really. A lot of the warmth is up here in the subtropics, way over here in the western part of the basin, whatever. If I looked at this and said this is going to give us a 30-name storm year, back then, people would have thought I was nuts. Again, it wasn't until April Ben Knoll started seeing it, as well as others. And, of course, we know what happened. So, what about today? And again, I hope you're sitting down. I think I said that last year. Because this is remarkable. It is really hard. I'm going to prepare you. I'm going to give you a couple seconds. That's 2020. That's 17. That's 10, 05, 04. Our biggest seasons until 2020, right? And this is what it looks like yesterday. What? I mean, unbelievable. That's a 30-name storm year that ended up happening. This is what it looks like on that exact day 4 years later. Oh, wow. Okay, so we have anomalies out here that are the warmest they have ever been this time of year, as far as records go. All right, got to put that caveat in there. There's our El Nino. We're losing it. It's going away. It'll, showed you that. And that is definitely one of the big pieces. I call these puzzle pieces. That's a big puzzle piece, okay? Several puzzle pieces right there glaring at us that suggest we could have a very busy season. Now, what nobody knows is where anything will end up tracking, despite their best efforts to tell you. We don't know for sure. Steering patterns, will the Azores, Bermuda High, be very strong and steer a lot of this activity west towards the islands and beyond? We don't want to forget there's a lot of areas outside of the United States. I'm not going to forget that. We're not just U.S.-centric here. Central America, the islands, the Greater Antilles, the Lesser Antilles, the Bahamas, Central America, Mexico, part of Central America, of course, and then the United States. And these systems, when you have a lot of them, some of them are going to turn way out in the Atlantic and they can end up over in Europe. I mean, they know that, but I'm making it a reminder here. We could have tracks like that. We could have a bunch of tracks coming in, like this, some starting late and curving up the East Coast. You just never know. But that setup, we are already, I want to keep emphasizing this, we are already 4 times warmer than we should be this time of year. Some of the temperatures out here in the deep tropics are where they should be in July. And these are facts. These are not scare tactics. This is not somebody manufacturing data for any reason other than to tell you about it. It's there. We can see this, okay? And so what do we do about it? Well, we're going to talk about that more as we get closer. Because this can change. We know that. And probably won't, because it's just like a big steamship coming at you or a train down the tracks, whatever, big freight train. Hard to stop those. Yes, not on a dime anyway. But we'll talk more about preparedness and what we can do with this information. What is important about it from an actionable point of view. Let's discuss that probably in April. All right, once we get some forecasts with this data. But for now, the hallmark signals are there. But what about the future? And we've talked about this a little bit, but I wanted to show you again. This is our guide to the future, the NMME, amongst other models. The European has one, the UK Met has a model, CANSIPS from Canada, but the North American Multi-Model Ensemble, the NMME, very handy guide for these big signals, the big pieces, not your everyday weather stuff, right? So here we are currently, captures the overall look of the warm Atlantic. There is our El Nino. We move this out into time. And again, huge tip of the hat to Dr. Levi Cowan for making this available in a very usable, easy to navigate interface. We appreciate it so much. So this is March, April, May. Once we get to May, the NMME is suggesting a La Nina, already starting at least cool neutral, and then look at the warmth of the Atlantic. Still there with a cooler than the tropics, subtropics, and that is very important. Let's keep an eye on that. That's June, that's July, that's August, and that's September. The La Nina is full grown, ready to go basin wide there by September. And then to me, this is a huge clue. The anomalies, the gradient, if you will, and the overall strength of the anomalies, strongest in the deep tropics, but the subtropics proper, right up through here, just to the north, not competing. And it's just enough, that difference in temperature, the gradient, very, very important. We also don't see crazy warm way up here to the north like we did in 22. The anomalies in the North Atlantic in 2022 were just stupid warm, more so than the deep tropics. And 2022 was a funky year. It looked like it could be really busy. We still had Ian among other storms, yes, but 2022 was kind of a weird year. If this validates in September of this year, that is definitely more of a look where the subtropics are not dominating over the deep tropics, and look at the Caribbean and Gulf also above normal, and then just not having an El Nino. Wow. So we got to watch this. We're getting close to the end of February, 10 days to go. The La Nina watch is up. It's out there. We're all seeing this. But I don't want to overwhelm everybody. We're just trying to, I want to play all the cards, put them all out, and make sure everybody's aware of what's happening. Because I've got a pretty smart audience. I think so. And I think it's important to not just hide the deck, so to speak. Don't play the cards close to the chest, following that metaphor. Put it out there. Let people know what's going on. And then let's start a discussion as we get closer within 90 days of the start of the season, because we could have some May activity. We might get back on that train again, so to speak. Remember, we took a year or two off where we haven't had anything in May after several years in a row with May activity in the Atlantic. So once we get to April, we'll start digging into more of, okay, what do I do with this? And just a few things before I let you go about that. Questions that we can help you answer. For example, you say, I'm new to an area, wherever that may be. A lot of people have moved south from the northern states during this last 4 years. All right? So I'm new. What do I do? Where do I find information about flooding, storm surge, evacuation? We're going to start pointing people into the right direction. Do some live stuff. Some Ask Me Anything type things on YouTube, on our Patreon. Really, as a community, try to mitigate the problem. We're not going to solve it. We're not going to be able to stop hurricanes from destroying property and taking lives. Although the taking lives part, that could be solvable if everybody will just be smart. But I want to be more focused on, all right, now we see this, now what are we going to do about it? And my last little metaphor for you, it's just like when you go to the doctor and they say your blood pressure is up, your weight is up, your blood work, a little bit too much salt in there, whatever the case may be, your cholesterol. Okay, there's the bad news. Well, what can I do about it? Oh, eat better, exercise, sleep better, whatever. There are solutions. And you and your doctor and hopefully your family as a team work all of that out. That's what I've been doing on a personal note, getting in better shape, sleeping better, eating better, losing weight again. It's great. And when you equate that to something like this, it can really work. We have to work together. We look at the problem, identify the problem, and then try to mitigate, lessen the effects of that problem. And in this situation, there's a lot that I can give you from my 30 years of experience, and we can work together as a team to help do something with this info. All right? So there you go. That's my discussion for you. We'll look at it again once in a while between now and April, but we're not going to harp on it every week. No reason to. We will revisit it again in this kind of detail in just a few weeks, because April is coming faster than you know it. All right? Anyway, I'll be back next Monday. We'll talk about other stuff, lower 48 weather, severe weather season is going to be coming soon. Yeah, probably sooner than we want. And at the first part of March, I think my March 4th update, Monday, March 4th, I think it is, I've got a huge announcement of something we're doing, a brand new project. It's been a while since I've had a new project, like totally brand new, and this is it, coming to you. Big announcement on March 4th, I think it is. Between now and then, I'll be back with a few updates, of course, all right? Have a great rest of your week from all of us at the Hurricane Track team. We appreciate you. Don't forget, we are on Patreon, Twitter, and YouTube. If you're following on YouTube, subscribe and hit the notification button. You know, the drill. Do it. Make it happen, and you can get updates from us and know when we go live. All right? Again, have a great rest of your week. I'm Mark Suttle. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next Monday.